kill that, and then I will run, I got to remember the port number, 27015. So I'll use FWTool, the demo program here, STCP server 27015, client address range, I'm going to say local subnet. Let me explain what I just typed. Firewall tool has an option to add a new rule, and it tries to make it as tight as possible. You have to specify this, the second parameter here, STCP server. That has to be the exact name of the program without the extension in order for the operating system to recognize that as the matching rule set when the application runs and not give the user that dialog prompt. Okay?
So all you would have to do is name your application as something that you already knew was registered.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. We'll get into that in a second. Come on, give me a second here, man. Jeez. Yes.
One, does the firewall, does this add UDP and TCP traffic, or can you limit it to just say, hey, add only TCP?
We'll get to that in a second, too. Okay, application name, port number, duh. Local subnet for the client address range. That local subnet, quote, 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 is actually a mnemonic that's provided by the firewall API. And so there's magic in the stack, in the networking stack, to translate that string local subnet into the proper net mask. Now, I am not going to assert that that translation is proper in all cases. So you've got to test this, because I have not tested that. It seems like a little bit of voodoo that could easily be gotten wrong. Anyway, that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so that's created a new rule for us. Let's go back to our view here and refresh and see if we can find the new rule. Oops, I clicked in the wrong window to refresh. Okay, there it is. So sorry, I don't know right off the bat how to make that bigger. Anyway, so now we've got one rule, and I'm not going to claim that it's as secure as possible, but my point is to show you that it's a step in the right direction. I am only allowing TCP traffic to the gentleman down in front. I'm only allowing this program to listen on a specific port, and I'm only going to allow traffic to this application from machines on the local subnet. So you can come up with a scenario where you might want to use local subnet. I don't know, maybe if you have a file share or some file sharing program, I guess, that you only want to be used by your work group, or maybe a database server. Anyway, and you can see that there's some other metadata here. The rest of the any's, local address any, remote port any, allowed user any, allowed computers any. Those are all additional parameters that you can stuff into this API that the sample calls. So you can control all this stuff. It's really easy. As a matter of fact, before I get to your question, as a matter of fact, you don't even have to use C and C++ for this. You can, for example, script a call to netsh.exe. You can use VB script. You can use COM. You could use COM interrupt for managed code. My point is, whatever you do, if you're providing a network-aware application, and specifically if you have an installer for it, which you presumably do, you should be setting up the proper rule in your installer. And also, don't forget, in your uninstaller, to roll back the proper rule. To your question, okay, so the question was,
Can you just name your application?
Thank you.
A name that you already know is in there and bypass being prompted?
Here's what you can do. I'll repeat the question in the form of the answer. You'll notice that part of the rule, one attribute of the firewall rule, is the full path of the application. Okay, so that seems kind of promising, right? That could mean something good from a security perspective. And it actually does. If I were to try to run STCP server from a different location on the, on the local disk or whatever, it would not match this rule. So that's good. What perhaps leaves room for improvement is that that's not a strong name, for example. So if I were to say take netcat and rename it to STCP server and put it in the same place, now netcat does match that rule. Okay? Because it's STCP server at that point from the perspective of the firewall. So what Microsoft should have done is they should have done, a hash. They should have done some sort of hash-based feature.
Again, it's more interesting on a block rule. On a block rule, the full path doesn't match, it doesn't apply.
On a block rule, the full path doesn't apply.
We said we didn't want to allow that program access to that board. If it was copied to any other path, it wouldn't apply.
Thank you. Any other questions about that?
Well, you didn't pass a path to your EXE, and yet I see in the firewall.
Yes, sorry. He just busted me on some demo voodoo. I did not pass the full path when I set up the rule. Under the covers, FW tool assumes that the program you're adding is in the same directory as FW tool, and it expands the path out for you, so I don't have to type as much when I'm sitting here doing demos and type it wrong and it fails, You could do, obviously at the point where we're running C code in Windows, you can do anything you want. So, yeah. Yeah.
So if you use a signed executable, is it check for signed?
No, the question was if you use a signed executable, will you get some of that strong name benefit? No. I'm told that that's a feature, the strong naming feature is kind of on the table for a future version of Windows. But, I haven't heard any sort of commitment about that or exactly how it would work.
So if you've got a treasure writer out there, they can just make all these calls before opening up their network socket, you'll never get the little pop-up even telling you that it's going on?
Absolutely. You have to make the calls. To repeat the question, let me rephrase the question. I think the interesting question here is what rights are required in order to create firewall rules. And you have to be an administrator. So if you're a Trojan writer and you've got code running as administrator, who gives a shit if you can open up firewall rules, dude? It's done, right?
So in that scenario with your typical Vista situation, it's going to kick up that same thing you want to run with administrator instead. That scenario.
Yes. If you're running your Trojan as the user and you're in this elevation situation, you're going to get another one of these prompts to the user that says, hey, do you want this application to do something nice or just to fail? Right? That's what the elevation prompt amounts to. So I would counter that you're still in trouble at that point. Right? If your user gets the prompt asking if they want to do something really dangerous, they're always going to click yes. So yes, you have to be administrator to do this, but I don't think that in particular is going to protect you. Okay. Okay, last one. There's a buddy of mine, his name is William Dixon. He does some consulting out here, and actually he's back in Seattle now. He's a big-time IPsec expert. He also used to work at Microsoft. And at the time when I needed to come up with another proposal for sample code for Microsoft in order to get the money, he came to me and said, hey, there's a big lack of IPsec sample, IPsec programming sample code. So why don't you do that? And I said, oh, thank God. So that's what this is. And specifically, the second bullet here, Winsock secure socket extensions. What that amounts to is a new set of socket-related APIs in Vista that allow you to specify some security requirements, some security attributes of a socket before it's opened. Okay, what does that mean? Again, the semi-scary architecture diagram, but bear with me here. The name of the tool that I wrote is IPsec ping. So it's basically ping, except with these socket extensions, built into the socket client. IPsec ping calls Winsock to try to open up a socket to a port specified on the command line to a server DNS name, also specified on the command line. Okay, we'll obviously get to this in a second. As a result of setting these new socket parameters, you see arrow number 1, there's a call being made over to, I'm not sure if, I confess, I'm not sure if Winsock is calling Ike directly. I may have this part of the diagram wrong, so forgive me for that. There are probably some experts in the crowd who can correct me on that. Anyway, as a result of these parameters being set in the client socket call, there is a call over to Ike. Ike is Internet Key Exchange. It's a system component in Windows that initiates the key exchange protocol